This episode of The Answer is Yes Baja Sessions is brought to you by Baja Bound Insurance Services. Driving to Mexico? You can buy and print out your Mexican auto insurance policy online in minutes with their easy-to-use website. They also have great travel information to help you plan your trip south of the border. Visit bajabound.com.
Hi, this is Ryan Thomas. Welcome to the Baja Sessions, where we chat with interesting people with interesting stories about all things related to the majestic peninsula of Baja California. Our guest today is a gentleman by the name of Neil Goss, and Neil is a retired professional snowboarder turned cinematographer who spends quite a bit of his time making movies in Baja. Neil, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Good talking to you, Ryan.
So we're not going to be able to hide the fact that we actually know each other. This podcast is about transparency and being real. So Neil and I are friends. We've spent time together in Baja, and I've been envious of you and your job many times. Tell us a little bit about what you do today for a living and how that why we're talking about that juxtaposed over the topic of Baja.
Well, I am a cinematographer and also produce and direct my own videos, whether it be TV shows, online videos, brand content. And I spend quite a bit of time down in Baja working with Cameron Steele doing his TV shows and you know, stuff like that. They do trail emissions, Rip to Cabo. We did a full TV show on the Nora, and that I started working with Cameron in about 2011. So since then, I've really started spending a lot of time in Baja. Very thankful to him for that.
Hey, you know what? Let's start this over. I want to try to not that I don't love Cameron, but okay. It seems like every time I'm talking to somebody, and it's probably because that's the pool of people that I've been grabbing here recently.
Gotcha. It'll be hard not to.
I know. So let's just talk about the fact that you make. I'll tee it up differently, okay? Because okay. I left you kind of a blank.
So you
slate.
Don't want me to talk about him at all, or just not?
It's. Let's see if we can tap dance around it.
Okay.
Let me start over again. I want to tee that up better. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Let me do the intro again. Actually, you know what? I think I can stop recording. No, I'm just going to go ahead and do it now. Hi, this is Ryan Thomas. Welcome to the Baja Sessions, where we chat with interesting people with interesting stories about all things related to the majestic peninsula of Baja California. Our guest today is a gentleman by the name of Neil Goss, and Neil is a retired professional snowboarder turned cinematographer who spends quite a bit of his time making movies in Baja. I spent some time with Neil over the last several years, actually worked on movies together, television shows together, and I thought it would be interesting to hear a little bit about Neil's journey, if you will, to becoming a cinematographer and ultimately ending up in Baja. So Neil, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So I've been fascinated with your life. To start off with the whole snowboarding thing, and you've told me the story about how that kind of came to be. And I know this podcast is primarily focused on all things Baja, but I guess in a roundabout way, you could say the snowboarding actually got you to Baja at the end of the day. So could you tell us just a little bit about the beginning of that and your snowboarding career?
Yeah, I mean, wow, I have to think back quite a ways, but I was always into filming films and running cameras, not really cinema cameras, but video cameras and all that. And as a kid, and then snowboarding kind of just fell into my lap. I finished high school. My brother moved up into Lake Tahoe to work at the ski resorts, and I tagged along with him and, started competing in local contests, became a professional snowboarder. And along with contests and all that in snowboarding, if you want to make a living and get your name out there, you also start doing photo shoots and hopefully get into the movies. I mean, that was a huge thing for me, learning how to snowboard, is watching all the Mac Dog movies, standard films and all that. And so naturally, I was already into film and cinematography. I I started gravitating towards that. When they were filming me, I'd ask them questions about their cameras, cinematographers. And so it was always on the back of my mind when I was snowboarding. And then, towards the tail end of my career, snowboarding, getting hurt and all that, I started picking up the camera more. And I'd always traveled snowboarding with like a Super 8 camera or a little mini DV camera. So it was always there. And when, sponsors weren't really coming after me anymore, I pursued that career. And so that's how I got into cinematography. Baja is a whole nother thing.
So I'm curious, you've made a living in and around the snow, and at some point in your career, you get an opportunity to go to Mexico and film in Mexico. Were you apprehensive first go around? You'd mentioned to me earlier that when you were a kid, you used to go to Tijuana. So my guess is that you probably weren't apprehensive. But tell me a little bit about your first memories of your time in Baja, and then a little bit about the first few times you started filming in Baja.
Yeah, so I wasn't really apprehensive at all. You always hear horror stories. Of course, my mom would be like, "Oh, are you sure it's okay?" And all that. But when we were kids, we'd go. I would spend a lot of time in Long Beach, where I'm from, and we'd go and stay in these cabins in San Diego, in Oceanside, actually, these little cabins. And we would go to Tijuana with our parents when we were really young, and just go shopping around, walk across the border, go buy little knickknacks for 50 cents or $1, and come back. And then as we were like preteens and teenagers, my grandma would park on the California side of the border, and we would walk across by ourselves. I was being escorted by my older brother and my older cousins that were probably only 15, 16 years old, and I was probably 13. So we were comfortable going over there at a young age. And so going there on little surf trips here and there, just not very far down. And I felt fairly comfortable down there. My Spanish isn't great, but when the opportunity came up to film down there, I jumped on it. I really wanted to go further south and explore more, and watching movies like Dust to Glory really piqued my interest. And I wanted to film the races. I wanted to see more of Baja, and that's really like what got me started going down there. That curiosity.
You mentioned Dust to Glory, and to the listeners that don't know what that is, highly recommend finding your way to see that, Dust to Glory 1 and Dust to Glory 2. There's actually 2. There was a second version of it, and it kind of highlights and documents the Baja 1000, which obviously does take place in Baja. So now you fast forward and you get the nod to come and film. I'm curious, and I'm assuming you're going to share my sentiments, but I know I can take pictures down there that ultimately make me look like I really know what I'm doing. And a lot of that, most of that, is because the natural geography, topography, flora and fauna. There's no end to the different types of things that you can point a camera at and take a picture or shoot video. Were you pleasantly surprised the first time you went down to make movies? Was it easy? Was it hard? Tell me a little bit about that. Obviously, you're remote most of the time when you're shooting the stuff you're shooting. What are the challenges? Is it easy? Is it hard? Tell me.
Well, the first project I went on was we were chasing the Baja 1000. And so if you've ever gone down and chased the 1000, if you're following a racer, you're not spending a lot of time in one area sitting there shooting. And also, one thing I didn't realize until I went down there was that a big portion of the Baja 1000 is at night. So you're not filming a lot. So I was actually a little bit disappointed on that first go around down there. And but I learned a lot, and just the little beauty that I did see. We were mostly in northern Baja. The race started in Ensenada and ended in Ensenada, so we didn't really get down into the real beauty of Baja, and I didn't even really know. I was just like, man, where are these spots that I see in the films or photos online, and all I'm seeing is a little bit of that, So I was a little disappointed the first trip, and it took a few years before I got back down and really saw the beauty of Baja, and mainly central Baja and further south.
So I have a picture in my when I hear somebody say Central Baja, I think Catavina, I think Boojum Cactus, I think lots of rocks, beautiful kind of plateau style mountains. Is that kind of what you're referring to when you say Central Baja?
Yeah, I mean, Catavina is probably, besides the coast or the Cia Cortez side, or Catavina is my favorite place in Baja. I mean, it's so beautiful. The plant life down there is just insane. The boujums and all the cactus, and I mean, I ride dirt bikes too, and I've ridden a little bit down there, but mostly just filming other people having fun riding down there, and and the stuff that I've seen, I dream about it all the time, and haven't really made it happen because there's a lot goes into it being down there and being safe on your bike because you're remote. I mean, it would be the same as going in the desert anywhere. It doesn't really make a difference that you're in a foreign country. It's just you're remote, and if anything happens, you need to have that support to help you get out of there. Unless you're just a total badass like, you know, Bill Nichols or Jimmy Soanes or some of those guys, you know. I'm not that badass, so I want to have the support when I go down there and just do a fun ride.
So you brought up some interesting names that I've had the pleasure of meeting. Jimmy Soanes. I don't believe I've met Bill Nichols. I've heard a lot about the gentleman, but I know you got to spend some time with Bill Nichols a while ago, filming what I thought was, or what you thought was going to be the creation of a trail that connected one section to another section, which I believe actually ultimately ended up being, I hate to say the word failure, but it didn't work out. But tell me about those two guys. Those guys are about as hardy as they get from what I've been told about Bill Nichols and from what I personally have experienced with Jimmy.
Yeah, I don't know Bill Nichols that well, and I don't know how much I can really talk about this little trip we did and trying to build this trail. But from what I understand, some people went back down there and actually made the trail work. But it's so gnarly that there's very few people that could get through the back end of it. And it was so painful and tough that they don't even want to go back. So it was something that Bill thought was going to be a little easier. And maybe if with some more time, they might be able to connect it. But where it is, I'll never say. And whether it will really work or if it is currently working, I'll never say. But Bill is just a visionary, and we all followed, you know, and there were some heavy hitters following him and trying to make this whole thing happen. And to my knowledge, it's not rideable to the average Joe, but some hard enduro pros could pull it off. And so that's that with him. And I mean, obviously his trails like Window Rock are legendary, and he's just a cool guy, man. And I didn't see him on the bike at all, but I hear he still rides. And
so you got to put this into perspective when we talk about Bill Nichols. I don't know, but he is, I mean, he's over 70. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know his exact age, but he's pushing 80, you know?
Yeah.
He's right on that edge. And for someone his age to still have that hunger and that passion for Baja is something that just excites me. I'm like, oh man, I have so many years left, you know, I can keep doing this. So that's really inspiring to see guys like that. And Jimmy Soanes is a younger version of him. You know, he's got that passion and love.
He's no spring chicken though.
He's not young either. I won't say his age. I'm not going to date him, but you know, he's older than me, and I'm in my 40s. So, but he's a big guy, and like I think that honestly to be a trip. And Bill's not, so I'm kind of contradicting myself here. But what I noticed about Jimmy riding it, he's such a big guy, and to go out there by yourself like Jimmy has done at night and ride these trails. I mean, you just have to be the most dominant beast in that desert down there, you know, no one's going to mess with you.
Yeah.
And Jimmy's that guy. I mean, if a lion tried to attack him, I think the lion would be in trouble. He's a big dude. And it's just cool to see guys, you know, older than me, just having that passion. And I got started late. So I thought I was getting started too late, but seeing these older guys still living that dream, I feel like I have a lot of years left to go down there. And I think, you know, I'll spend a lot of time down there riding dirt bikes, hopefully.
So, you know, you bring up an interesting point, and I have the unique and ultimately